Welcome to our next episode of Sobremesa Chats. My name is Hilda McClure, COO Connecta Center.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Palafox, and I'm the lead clinician here in Canenta, San Antonio.
Yeah, we're so excited you guys are joining us today. We are April. We will be chatting about two kind of interrelated topics, but we're kicking off today around high achieving Latinas and kind of the pros and cons, maybe is it maybe a good way for us to put it, of um, being high achieving and high ambition.
hmm
Um, do you want to kick us off with this quote?
Yeah, so earlier this year, I had the opportunity to do a presentation with an organization um, called Latinas in Progress, and it's through the oh my goodness, it's the National Hispanic Women's
The Hispanic Women's Network of Texas,
there we
HWNT.
go. Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
words. Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
So they have their within that they have the group of Latinas in Progress, and it's students from high school all the way through like doctoral programs, and they're just presenting them with different information from like financial management to mental health, right? So it goes across the board. So I was able to present with them. And as I was putting together a session on perfectionism, high achieving, I came across this quote in the research. And this comes from Patricia Arboleda, and she is one of Forbes' kind of like distinguished Latina executives. And she says, for Latinas, perfection is the baseline, right? And that's gonna kind of kick off what we're going to talk about today, where there's been, or, a lot of the times there's been moments where we can't be anything less than perfect when it comes to being Latinas in certain professional fields. I mean, across the board, really, but specifically within some of these professional settings. And yeah, I'm excited to kind of go into it today.
Would you consider yourself a high achieving Latina or high ambition? I don't know that they're
Yeah,
always the same, but
yeah. I yes, yes, and so uh, from like elementary school, right? When we talk about gifted and talented programs, right? I was in a program like that. So I think from very early on, that was a framework I was operating from, right? Where I more is expected of me or more should be expected from me. And throughout school, that was kind of a big part of my identity, right? Is being on the AB honor roll, National Honor Society, right? So even the words, right? Gifted and talented honors, um, that just kind of meant something. And like I internalized that as like that means something about who I am. That's like really important, really valuable, but also not just for me, for, my parents, is this making them proud, after a lot of the sacrifices they've made, can I show them that it's worth it? And so I think right now I would maybe reframe it to um like I do strive for excellence, but I think right now it's shifted more towards a purposeful work, right? Being more purpose driven than success driven, if that makes sense.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think we'll get into this today, but I also think like as we do our like kind of internal work, some of that drive shifts.
Mm-hmm. What about you? Would you consider
Um,
yourself like to fall under that category?
for sure. for sure. I've been like that since I was a little girl, or at least in my teen years for sure. Just very high achieving, got good grades, um, just just had to be the best of the best. Um, and then that rolled into college. I remember getting like my first B on my college transcript, like bawling my eyes out. Um,
Mhm.
and then even on my graduate transcript, there's one class I got to be in, and which is not even a big deal, but it felt devastating. Um,
Mhm.
and then I think I've mentioned this on here before, like up until last year, I've always had at least two or three different jobs, and I keep working my way into other things. So, um, more recently, I sit on a couple boards now and
Mm,
um, do a couple like different things in the community. And I think the goal has been to move into more like you said, purposeful work and intentional work. And I would be lying if I said that I always nailed that. I think it's way better now. Um, but sometimes I do get stuck in kind of like this high achieving overdrive place. A couple of weeks ago, my therapist like asked me towards the end of sessions. She's like, "When is enough enough?" Like, I gotta
mm,
go. I gotta go. And so that brought up a lot of emotions, and
mhm.
it's kind of like stuck with.
Yeah.
But so I would definitely say yes. Yes.
Mhm.
I think it's
Mhm.
better now than it's been in terms of unhealth. But I think that like I like that's like my kind of go-to or my tendency.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I think some of it has to do personally with my childhood, and then there's another part that is more personality. Just like I love to learn, I love to build, I love to be a part of things. Um, But you get married, you have a relationship, you have friends, and you have to learn how to navigate and balance that because that's also very important to me. Um,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think kind of segueing a little bit, I think that one of the things about being Latina too is kind of the unspoken expectations for us. I think I'm not necessarily first gen, but I know that first gen students experience a lot of that around like making their like you kind of named it, right? Like making their sacrifices worth it. But I also think that in just the workplace, there is an expectation of perfection because we always have to like prove ourselves.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And so the only way to kind of do that is to be like high achieving.
Yeah. There are, I think, attributes that matter when it comes to, again, striving for a certain goal or being excellent. And I do remember when I presented with the LIP program was mixed responses, around some of the information presented around, how some students said that for them, that's just kind of what you do. Like that's just part of what their family's always done. It's just kind of part of what you do. Because it requires discipline, it requires resilience, um, but it also can create for you a life that feels stable and feels safe. And I think that piece is also valid and makes sense as to why it can be easy to adopt those same kind of like tendencies because there there are kind of those positive attributes. I think it's just kind of a line between how far am I leaning, one way or another. Um, but in I guess in achieving things, right? How do you feel that's maybe kept you safe or protected you?
I think for me, it's it's tied to like maybe some worthiness. I had the thought and then this week se me va el hilo. Um, I think for me it's been tied to worthiness the most. And worthiness gives me safety.
Mm,
Um, yeah. I think like even if I think even like in my relationships, like if I can
mm-hmm,
be helpful,
mm,
that helps me stay in relationship
yeah.
with others. And so one of the ways I think I've developed that is like if I can be high achieving and that looks like a different, I don't even know honestly if it for me it's the high achieving as much as it's the knowing,
Mm, yeah.
like being good at what I do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
more the safety, that
expertise.
kind of, yeah, that pushes the high achieving. Um, where it's like, no, it's about being really good at what I do and knowing all the things. That
Mm-hmm,
is what kind of creates the safety that then turns into high achieving.
mm-hmm,
I also want to say that I like what I do. Like I
mm-hmm,
do, like I like, I was talking to someone the other day. Um, who was I chatting with? I can't remember who I was talking to exactly, but she and we were talking about how much we enjoy building things, and uh, and I've had a couple opportunities to do that over the span of my career, and that once we kind of get bored or whatever, like we move on to the next thing. And so I think it looks like high achieving, but really it's just like more a personality trait where it's like, I don't like
mm-hmm,
this second part. I like the first part.
mm-hmm,
And I love the research and stuff. So there's pros and cons. But I think for me, it has been about safety in relationship. If I can be helpful, if I can know, and then that has become what has looked like high achieving.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah. What about
that
for
makes
you?
sense. Um, I think at first, again, uh, early on, it was more about, I think, I guess also value, like special, like feeling
Mhm.
special,
Mhm.
and feeling that mattering, right? Like that I
Yeah.
matter. Um, and then it was just reinforced with certain beliefs or sentiments that were shared by my family. Um, Not even like just my core family, but even like family friends or um people who saw me and were like, um, qué orgullo, or like siempre, siempre échale ganas, and then also just like not being wasteful of opportunities. Just, oh, I didn't have that. I didn't have that. And so almost like I can't be wasteful, it's um I'm taking advantage. I'm but I think that's cultural, right? Like not being wasteful in any way from like food on the table to these opportunities. So I think it's been a mixture of those two things of mattering, but also um really embracing things that maybe weren't available to other people. Um, but again, like I still struggle with the balance of there's so much, and like you were mentioning, like the passion and the curiosity that comes with always maybe like learning something new or developing a skill more deeply. And it just does expand your worldview in a lot of ways, and that's really cool. Um, but there's just like a fine line of
Mhm.
like uh then when am I doing things out of guilt, right? Like if I don't take an opportunity, like what if I am really burnt out, or what if I'm tired? What if I'm just not interested in it, but I feel like this is an opportunity that doesn't come around often. And then that guilt or the pressure. Um, so yeah, I feel like I just really still struggle with with those two things.
Yeah. I hear that and I get that. And I think what it made me think of is like when my therapist asked me, I mean, it was literally last session, like so last week, um, is when is enough enough? And I
Mhm.
think where I really struggled when even answering that question, we didn't get to go too deep into it. It was like towards the end of session, but I think to your point, where there is a really fine line for me, where like some of this is just like how I'm built, right? Like there's just like a natural, sorry, my phone keeps going off. Um, there's a natural, um, like I'm just built that way. I'm like naturally curious. I love to read. I love to know. I love to research. I probably the last 6 months I've discovered Reddit. And I've talked about my Reddit obsession on here before, but one of the reasons why I love it because it's like so much information, right?
Mhm.
And it's anecdotal. Like I love the research
Mhm.
and I love
Yeah.
reading research paper, but I think like as a therapist, I love story and I love like
Mhm.
hearing about
Mhm.
others' experiences. And so what makes that question really hard to answer is that I can absolutely name that there's some of it that has a lot more to do with identity, has more to do with my wounding and trying to like compensate for that. But there's also a big part of it that is just like, that is who I am. That's who I want to be in terms of like curiosity and opportunity. And like you said, it expands the worldview. Um, but I think it feels important to name that there is, there's a lot of folks that are not like that. And
Mhm.
that's okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
That they are very content with the day in, day out of whatever they have their own version of of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I think for women, at least for me, sometimes I feel punished, like
Mm.
where like if I'm doing this, I can't be like a mom, or I can't be
Yeah.
a good wife, or I can't be whatever. But that's not necessarily true in reverse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do. I do also kind of like on like not being able to do it all. Um, and that's where sometimes I have to ask myself, where do I need to maybe adjust or step back because maybe I'm doing well in one area, maybe like professionally, but then my home is a disaster. Or
Hmm.
maybe I'm super invested in my clients and their progress, but I haven't talked to my parents in like two
Hmm.
weeks, you know? And it's that piece too of, well, like, well, where do I need to have a where do I need to do temperature checks, I guess, when it
Hmm.
comes to being super driven or super, we won't call it driven, we want to call it passionate, but also outside of that, when do I need to do a temperature check? Because those other things matter too,
Yeah.
quality time with family, feeling at peace in my home,
Yeah.
um, moving my body, and I know we'll get into it into another session, but just self-care, can
Mhm.
easily go um to
Out
like
the
take a back
window.
seat.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that's a very real thing. And I think also a part of that too is I think that as women, as Latino women, there's also I don't want to say a burden, but like there is, I think, extra responsibility put on us around even some of the things you named, where it kind of falls on us to be initiators of things. And it's not always an even, not that it necessarily needs to be even, but right, it's kind of like, okay, if you're not cleaning, and I'm not saying that this isn't what's happening, I'm just like naming it, right? That if you're not cleaning, no one else is cleaning, right? Because that is seen mainly as a woman's chore versus a household chore for everyone involved.
hmm
Um, and so I think women who have like families or partners or whatever, they feel that maybe a little bit differently.
hmm
And I think some of that can also be just like we're built a little bit different, right? Like my husband, God bless him, love him. But like, he realizes that there's no toilet paper too late. You know what I mean? And I can tell that like, oh, we have two left. I need to go buy some this weekend,
Yeah.
you know?
Literally this morning, that exact scenario played out. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm like, how do you not know? But right, and so I think there's like our brains and our because of some of the rules, right? Like we it plays out a little bit differently. But yeah,
Mm,
but I think it makes it extra hard sometimes because it's like I really like we literally can't do it all. There's
yeah.
no way. There's no way to do all of it well. Some of it has to fall by the wayside. And how do we stay out of like try to stay out of guilt around some of
Hmm.
that? When
Hmm.
appropriate. Guilt can be really helpful when it is,
Yes.
outside of
Yeah.
alignment, but sometimes it's just unreasonable. Unreasonable. I also
Yeah.
think you were naming some of the things that we talk about in our families and like some of the expectations, the things they say, like de las pilas or like taking advantage of the opportunities. And I also think about our moms and just like how much
Mm-hmm.
they did, like just
Mm-hmm.
how much they did and how few choices they had in terms of doing it all and the sacrifice that they had to make to raise kids. And right, the world was just very different back then than it is now, in some ways, and the expectations on women.
Yeah, and even like how we were saying that high achieving or perfectionism is outside of professional settings because I know my mom sh- my version
Mm-hmm.
of clean and organized is definitely not her version of clean and organized,
Mm-hmm.
and how difficult it is for her to just rest if it's just not exactly how it needs to be. Or after hosting a party, like rather than maybe just kind of like tidying up, like a full mop is out and like that. But then again, again for her, that's like her almost like her passion too, because she's like, no, this is what like relieves a lot of things for me too. So it's just so interesting how like double-sided, I guess, that coin is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because you don't want to take away. I think it can be real easy, in the world of mental health, and you and I know this and see this, for us to get stuck, even as clinicians, around what it's supposed to look like,
Mm,
right?
hmm.
Like where
Hmm.
we're looking at a client and we're like, wow, you never sit still. And they can name they never sit still.
Yeah.
And the systems they have in place actually work really well for them. It just doesn't necessarily look like what we think it should look like based on education,
Hmm. Hmm.
whatnot. And kind of like you said about your mom, like for her there's a lot of internal peace that happens because of
And
that.
yeah.
And so do we like tell her not to do it or to take it away because it isn't, um maybe what we expect for
Right.
self-care?
Right. Hmm. Hmm.
I don't know, I don't have an answer to that.
No, I think it's an ongoing one, truly. And again, like I really enjoyed the conversations I had with the students earlier this year because they were making like good, I was like valid, making valid points in the ways that has helped them, the way that that's gotten them to like some of the graduate programs they're in or some of the career opportunities, that that ambition, right, is um it's energy, right? Like it's energy and it's just kind of deciding what do I want to do with that energy.
Well, changing gears a little bit for us, we talked a little bit about that kind of fine line. And so if you're watching and you're like, I don't know how to tell the fine line, how do we kind of assess for that? I mean, obviously, Elizabeth and I have been, and many of y'all have also been in the work for a long time. We've been in the work for a long time. One of my therapist friends and I always laugh about how I think that as a clinician, we don't really get a break from kind of this work because of the way we show, like part of showing up in the counseling room is like we always have to be doing work. So I
Mhm.
think that we probably think about it more than the average person because we have to. It's like a job part of the job. At least we would hope for it to be, right, part of
Yeah.
that. Other clinicians are also doing this.
Mhm.
Um, but if you're not in the work like us, what are some of the ways that maybe we can start having this kind of recognizing the fine line and identifying what, that where this high ambition comes from?
Mm. Where it comes from, and then like how to move through it. Well, one would be kind of just paying attention to some of the noises or messages that kind of come through um, in situations where maybe a mistake is made. Is the first thought, ugh, I'm so dumb, I'm the worst person, right? Is it leaning more as more critical, or is there something more neutral like, I could do that better, or how can I do that better the next time I try this? Or who can I ask for help if I want to try this again? So is what is the tone of it? Um, when you're making a mistake, when you feel unsure of something, so when you're resting as well, if you want to take a break or if you want to take a step back, same thing. Is the voice more like you're being lazy? Again, you're missing out on opportunity, or is it I'm listening to my body's needs right now. Um, I know people who rest and that doesn't, change anything about who they are. So kind of just noticing, yeah, those different kind of voices coming through. And then let's say you do find I'm being a little bit more critical, I'm being a little bit more I'm kind of maybe adding to the pressure, the guilt. There is some work being done around there's work that has been done around self-compassion for a long time, but specifically, I can touch on some of the work that Dr. Kristen Neff out of UT Austin has been doing around self-compassion. And self-compassion, and I don't know if this is something that you've seen, Hilda, but people will confuse it, at least in like in sessions, people might confuse it with self-pity of I don't like how that sounds, when I say I did my best, right? Or um I am just one person, right? Like when we practice self-compassionate statements, that sometimes that misconception or just that perception is, well, I don't want to feel sorry for myself or I don't want to baby myself. But self-compassion doesn't have to mean that or look like that. And so she does a lot of work around self-kindness. So both words and gestures. So she talks about like gentle touch with yourself, like it's okay, almost like that self-soothing or it's like apapachar, it's okay, it's okay. Um, you don't have to say it's okay. You could just a simple kind of like, I'm here. Um, but also the words, right? Because words have meaning. I don't know if you've heard of the study of the two plants. There was a plant in the like dark room, and there was like heavy metal music playing, and they were like basically cursing out this plant. And then in another room, it was bright light, classical music, and they were telling the plant, "You're growing so strong, your leaves are so vibrant." And you can only imagine, how the two plants fared. And these are plants, right? They don't have the awareness we have. And so, us as aware individuals, even the words we give to ourselves are energy. And so, Dr. Neff talks about switching it to a kind energy. So that's a lot of the work she does with, again, high achieving individuals. She also talks about mindfulness of the moment. Sometimes we're jumping ahead of like, what do I have to do next? What do I have to do better? How can I avoid failing like this again? but can we come back to the present moment for a second? Can we look around us? Can we be like if we're drinking our coffee, like what is the smell of this coffee? What's the taste of this coffee? Just like really immersing ourselves back into the present moment can just give our brain a break. And then that third component to her self-compassion work is common humanity. So finding that we're not the only ones sort of going through this, or we're not the only ones who've made a mistake, we're not the only ones who have struggled, sharing that with others. And you know, that was a super quick kind of overview, but some of those can be steps that can begin someone can begin to implement even now if they notice they're struggling with that like the meaner side, I guess, the meaner
Mhm.
side of perfectionism or high achieving mentality.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of self-kindness. Um,
Yeah.
that's like
Mhm.
so powerful. I do find that many folks, high achieving or not, come in and they have a very, very loud self-critical voice, and that's how they talk to themselves. Um, and I think that one of the things that I like really encourage my clients, or like one of the goals that we kind of set is around how do we build more flexibility, like emotional flexibility,
Mm,
so that we
mhm,
don't get stuck anywhere.
mm, mhm.
And I think self-kindness is a big part of that, where I can understand that I'm going to be kind to myself while also not changing whatever the standard is,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like I can still be high achieving and really kind to myself. Um, those don't have to. And I think that if you're not being kind to yourself, that's a great place to get curious around um, why that is. And what, you know, what do you hope to get out of being mean to yourself? Does it motivate you? Does it put you on the right track? Right? Like how is the
That's,
bullying of
yeah.
self helping you get where you're going?
I laugh because I think of just how um in in some, Latino families, the the sort of teasing and the sort of like name calling is kind of meant to like
Mm-hmm.
um I one of the words used growing up is like mensa, right? Like no seas mensa. Like presta atención, no seas mensa. Like don't be dumb, don't be foolish. That was one. Um, and then I mean, I don't want to like drop a bunch of like name calls or phrases, but almost just that of like, um, what are you thinking? You could do better. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of meant to keep you like quick on your toes, right? And it is a survival kind of thing. Like we can't maybe don't always have the time to sit and think and regroup. It's like you gotta be quick about it. And sometimes the way to do that is just kind of like being mean to someone to get it together, right? And
Yeah.
so if it's worked and you notice like that's the only thing that works for me, um, can we like you said, flexibility, can we make at least like a 5%,
Mm-hmm.
can we include like just 5% of kindness for every of the 95% you're being mean? Can we practice like incorporating some kindness?
Yeah. I love that. I also love along that same line, something that's been like so transformative, even just for me personally, and I'm always trying to teach clients, is that whenever any of this happens and I notice I'm being self-critical, I am becoming dysregulated.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Mm-hmm.
dysregulated part of me is very cruel, and it is can be very mean, because right, like it is trying to keep us safe, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
going to pull out all the stops to do that, and it's going to lean into the things we've heard in childhood, etc. If I give myself 5 to 10 minutes to come back into grounding, come back into, so like almost like I pause it. I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I can feel the shame, I can feel the upset, I can tell I'm becoming dysregulated by the way I'm talking to myself. If I can give myself 10 to 15 minutes to come back into regulation, whether that is being in the present, going to get a snack. Hanger is a real thing, and hanger will be
Mm-hmm.
like hunger will make you dysregulated because your blood sugar
Mm-hmm.
spikes and there's like
Mm-hmm.
dips and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Can I go take a little like short little nap? Don't
Mm-hmm.
sleep all day. That's another right issue. But like a little,
Mm-hmm.
just like I'm just gonna go lay down for a couple minutes, get my head on straight. Um, any of those things, and then come back to that conversation. I find that inherently we will naturally be more kind to ourselves
Mm-hmm.
without
Like that.
necessarily, yeah, like not necessarily needing a ton of external input to get us there, right? But creating that little bit of flexibility where it's like, okay, I can tell I'm dysregulated. I don't have to give all this stuff meaning.
Yeah.
Let me go find some regulation. And then once I'm regulated, excuse me, once I'm regulated, I can kind of lean into some of this self-kindness a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Because regulation is not always right, but a lot of times regulation is like the better,
Yeah.
right, state.
Mm-hmm. To like maybe kick that off if you again if you notice and you say like I'm getting dysregulated, something that can also be helpful is just a statement, this is a feeling and not a fact,
Mhm.
and just that can again like wipe the windshield a little bit and see the through the fog just a little bit, it's a
Uh,
feeling, not a fact.
Absolutely, absolutely. And feelings are here to give us information, right? So remembering that feelings are information givers.
Hmm.
I use a lot of the analogy of like they shouldn't be driving the bus.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
shouldn't be driving the bus. I'm trying to think of an analogy, but I think about it when emotions are driving the bus, they're like driving crazy. It's the scene in Harry Potter where I don't remember what movie it is, the fourth, the fifth, I don't know. It's like down towards the end, and he is traveling through London, and he doesn't have I can't remember the exact details. Shame on me, um, but basically he gets on this magical bus and it's driven by this, I think, old man or something, and they drive super crazy between the
Oh
cars
my
because it's
gosh.
a magical bus, so it gets like smaller and bigger, and it stops hard, and
Mm,
that's what I imagine emotions,
that's perfect. Yeah.
right?
Yes.
That's how they drive the bus because they feel so afraid, like a lot of times, right? Like that big emotions, there's a lot of fear
Yeah.
versus like, hey, they can sit behind the driver and say like, hey, this doesn't feel right, or this
Mhm.
doesn't, I don't know if we should turn down this street.
Mm,
Right. And then I can use information, like I can use that information to indicate that maybe I need to shift gears.
yeah.
Include and the logic part of our brain also sits in the back seat, and they kind of work
Mhm.
together for what we've talked about, the capital S self, to be
Mhm.
able to drive the
Mhm.
bus.
Yeah.
Um, and so when you say it's a fact, it's a feeling, not a fact, it makes sure the feeling gets put in its like we're not going to ignore the feeling, but we're going to
Right.
make sure they're not driving us
Yes.
through the streets
Mhm.
of London like that. um, um, and I think if we can always like continue to change our relationship with our feelings, they kind of quiet down when we give them enough space to inform us,
Mhm. Mhm.
like even
I,
that self-critical part.
yeah. I don't know if we have time to share like the little pop culture moment that
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to touch on. So for any the Pit fans, I just watched last night's episode. Again, no spoilers. But I think I was just thinking a lot because I knew we were filming this, and I was thinking a lot about some of the characters and how this just gets manifested on screen so well. So we have doctors Mohan and Javadi, and they are two female resident doctors, and they one like their face of just fatigue, exhaustion, burnout, like is so. visceral. Like I just want to be like, girl, go take a nap, like go outside. But just like the narratives that come up of you're not doing enough, you keep messing up, be better. One of them is the daughter of like the chief surgeon or something like that. And again, like, well, if I have to live up to this expectation, but how hard it is for them at times to be attuned to their patients because of that, right? There's just this block that makes it difficult for them to be as effective as they would like to be. And at times things spill over, like one had a panic attack in front of her patient and the other, broke down crying. And it's just one of those things, not that those are, they're not allowed to be human, but how a lot of their tolerance for the stuff that they were facing was so narrow because of that. Like
Mhm.
that's been the running thing. I'm not good enough. I need to be better. As opposed to one of the newer characters this season, Dr. Joy. She's just like so good at setting boundaries. There was a scene where she was like a minute to clock out time, and somebody was like, "Hey, we're still a little bit backed up. Like, feel free to stay." And she was like, "No, I'm good." She was like, "I put in my hours today. I'm not going to be one of the doctors that burns out. See ya." And I just found that so refreshing,
Mhm.
you can still be an amazing, provider or whatever
Mhm.
role, do your capacity in such a great way, but also like prioritize yourself too in order to show up the next day with that full energy. So
I love that.
wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, I love that. That show is so good. So good.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, we are so glad you joined us for today's episode. Just the reminder, right, that you can be ambitious and high achieving and very driven, and right that we can balance that, right? Create or even create space to be other things as well. Doesn't have to be one
Hmm.
thing, right? If you're curious, want to know more, you can check out Dr. Kristen Neff's work. I do think she has a book.
She has a book and she has a website with a lot of like educational resources, meditations, videos.
Mhm. So you can check out her stuff. And if you're interested in therapy and you are looking for a Latina therapist, we have quite a few here
Mhm.
at Canenta. You can check us out at canentacenter.com.
Mhm.
I also want to highlight that next month on May 16th, we are having our summit. And yes, I'm so excited. And we are going to be talking about kind of the using a little bit of Dr. Yasso's work around cultural wealth and reconnecting with the different ways that we can be practicing healing that's inherently like connected to our culture.
Mhm.
So we'll be talking about herbs and scents and limpias and food and like just how our different foods help us be nourished. So it's going to be a great time. You can check that out at, I don't know what the website, but you can check it out on canentafoundation.org.
Yeah.
It'll be posted on there. And I think there's 1 week left before the early bird special ends. So I think it ends on the 9th. So next Friday,
Mhm.
next
Mhm.
Thursday, something like that. So it's coming soon. All that to say it's coming soon. So yeah, check us out there. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you at the next one.